In defense of DEI, the case for creating opportunities for black men in corporate America. Brothers and the sisters here with us today, many of you know there has been a full-on assault that's been waged on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in all sectors. This includes public universities, like in the states of Kentucky and Florida over this past year. However, many corporations are standing their ground. In fact, many of you are in this very room today, and we thank you. Many of you are standing their ground and redesigning their strategies to secure a culture of inclusion and belonging necessary to be profitable and deliver shareholder value. So this next session that we're going to have today, it is curated to help us understand what's at stake for black men pursuing careers in corporate America, and we've gathered an amazing panel of experts to guide us through this crucial discussion. Can you please do me a favor and join me in welcoming the Chief Diversity Officer for Morgan Stanley, Sam Lalanne, the Chief Diversity Officer for American Airlines, Cedric Rockamore, and our amazing moderator, the Chief Marketing Officer and Head of Product for PushBlack, Kevin McFall. Ladies and gentlemen, join us in welcoming our esteemed panel.
Then you will understand righteousness, justice, and equity, every good path. For wisdom will come into your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Proverbs chapter 2, 9 through 10. My name is Kevin McFall. Welcome to In Defense of DE&I. I want to acknowledge and give thanks to Earl G. Graves Sr. As part of his legacy was that he endeavored to advocate that corporations prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a meaningful commitment to this business imperative, which continues with the Black enterprise family. In the book, Diversity Done Right, DEI expert Tyrone Studemeier emphatically stresses that DEI is what we as leaders strive to have, not just to check a box, but also because we want our companies and our communities to accurately reflect the mosaic that is this country. Diversity entails the conglomeration of voices, experiences, languages, ethnicities, and cultures, and genders that represent all of us. Diversity done right enhances our collective well-being and the greater good. It's an actionable read and a highly recommended takeaway from this session. So let's get into it. What are we as professionals and DEI leaders going to do differently, Cedric?
Well, first, I would be remiss if I didn't say I am in a space, I'm intoxicated with with these brothers. I am on high, and so I can look to the heavens and thank God that they're, for Butch Graves and Black Enterprise and the work that they're doing. I have spent time with Butch, and I know, and I say this every time I get a chance to say this, he believes in this. He is doing this for all the right reasons. So I think first is we have to think about this attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that it's important to understand that if you are truly serious about this work, and I'm talking corporations, then these attacks are just par for the course. There's nothing new, there's nothing different. We thought out how we was gonna approach this, and so we're staying on that course. So if you've already thought about it, you already have a vision, you already have a strategy, or you already have employed tactics, then all you have to do is trust the process and stay the course. So that's how I approach that particular question.
Thank you, and Sam, the same question.
I would also like to start off, as Cedric did, by just thanking Black Enterprise, Butch, Black Men XCEL organizers for putting this together. At Morgan Stanley, we have 25 other representatives that are here in the room. Let's give it up for them. And we got here on Wednesday, maybe like many of you, feeling a little bit lower energy than normal, right? A little bit downtrodden for some. I saw people, coming in with their luggage, their heads were down, and that first night was tough. What I've seen since then is this boost of energy, this boost of B12. And I know, and I think I can speak for all of us, we are leaving here today much more engaged and excited and empowered than when we first got here. And so thank you to the organizers for it. So I agree with what you said, Cedric, in terms of where we are right now. I would just maybe add to it by saying this. This work has always had to evolve. It's always had to change over time. You think about the beginning of diversity and inclusion when it was just called diversity. It really came out of 1965 Civil Rights Act. We saw that it was really about just getting people, diversity into the workplace, a focus on women. Then it became a focus on black talent across corporate America. But it was just really about bringing people in at any level. What we've seen over the years and the decades is a maturation and evolution of that strategy to not just be about how do we attract and recruit talent into corporate America, despite the challenges, but also how do we create a sense of belonging, a sense of culture for those that are here? How do we think about retention efforts? So that's nice to see the evolution of this work, but it just reminds us that it's constantly changing. And so we're used to that change, and we're ready for this change that's going to happen in 2025 and beyond because we've done it before. So I'm empowered, I feel good, I'm confident about what's to come because we've done this before, that's part of our MO. The one thing that I would call out that corporate DEI programs and corporations in general need to be thinking about is not just our internal efforts and not just what's happening in terms of the external landscape, but how are we supporting other groups that are also feeling challenged right now? We know back in 2023, the Supreme Court's decision to essentially overturn affirmative action, the impact that it has on colleges and universities. We talked a lot about this week about the impact on corporate America, but there's a third group. It's our nonprofit organizations that are doing great work in our communities all across the country that are also feeling challenged in this moment. So for corporate DEI programs, I'm thinking we should all be thinking about how do we engage our communities and those that are doing great work in our communities to continue to build them up, and that with that we can all move forward together.
I definitely agree with you that it has to be both internal and external facing, but what we've seen, particularly during this election season, it's elicited a tidal wave of emotions and thoughts and concern. What do you see as the most significant challenges ahead of you in promoting and continuing that process of implementing DEI initiatives? Cedric?
Yeah, I don't know that I would see it as a significant challenge, but more of a mindset. And I think I still find it challenging, I'll say that word, I guess, where there is this lack of understanding and making the connection of the business imperative of this work. Many talk about this work or think about this work almost in a moral sense. It's the right thing to do, but it's the business imperative. This is a business imperative. And so I think as you are thinking about this, connect this work to the business. This is about culture. Naming words matter. People now hear diversity, they get triggered. They hear inclusion, they get triggered. Equity, they get triggered. So I don't get caught up so much in the words more so than I do get caught up into what it is about. It is about culture. It is about social norms. It is about opportunities. It's about fairness. And when we think about, or when I think about DEI, I think about diversity as representation. That's representation of all of us. I mean, every single one of us. Equity is, I think about that as just simply fairness. fairness. And people can say fairness is relative, but at the end of the day, simply fairness. And then this last piece is inclusion, and we talked about it, you talked about, Sam, inclusion in the end goal of that is this sense of belonging. Because we all know when you feel like you belong somewhere, that's a whole different thing than being inclusive. We can have, and we do, we have very inclusive environments. But you can still walk into a place that it feels inclusive, but you don't believe that you belong there. So when we talk about our customers on our aircrafts and in our airports, we're talking about people feeling that they belong there, not just that they're included. So the evolution also is around the end game of inclusion, but again, making sure that we are connecting this as a business imperative. We all know that the data, we all know what the research says. We all know that diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams. We all know that. This is a business imperative. So that's what I want to make sure that we continue to keep this in a business
and I want to hear from Sam on this as well, but I want to add to what Cedric was suggesting, this challenge of feeling like you belong in a culture. Some of that has to rest on those others in the workforce. Talk to us about getting over that challenge of convincing others that you belong.
Your sense of belonging means so much. It really is about how do you describe the impact that as a talent organization you can make to the company's business strategy. So I completely agree with where Cedric, you just took the conversation. For those that are not familiar with Morgan Stanley, we're a financial services company, 80,000 employees across 41 countries. We raise, allocate, and manage capital to individuals and institutions. Our whole focus is our client. So you can't have a diversity, equity, inclusion strategy without thinking about the client. And so a lot of what we do is based around not just thinking about our people internally at Morgan Stanley and our communities, as I mentioned before, but how we engage our clients. The more you engage in terms of the embedding into the diversity inclusion strategy, the more you create a sense of belonging by creating that type of a culture and that framework. But you do so in a number of different ways, Kevin. You do so by creating anchors of communities, such as your employee network groups or employee resource groups or BRGs, whatever your company might call them. You also do so by having embedded diversity councils into all of your business lines with a tone from the top with senior leadership that are engaged. So to get to the crux of how do you create that sense of belonging, you have to be intentional about it. You have to make sure that leadership cares and they're not just mindful about just checking boxes. And you have to engage and understand the needs of all of your employees. If you care about someone's sense of belonging, you have to go and ask them what was going to make them feel like they belong. You can't just assume. And so by asking those questions, by being intentional about how you engage and creating mechanisms of support is how you can create a sense of belonging within the company.
Hey,
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Sid.
Yeah, let's rest here for a minute. So with this thing around how do you convince people that you belong, I struggle with that.
Talk to us.
And the reason I struggle with it is, and I'll just use my own product, the American Airlines, our own product. If the ticket was X amount of dollars and it was a first class seat, I don't know how I feel about, and I'm taking liberty with this and making an exaggeration just to get a point. I don't know how I feel about me now having to prove to you, say why I should be there. I think the onus is upon you to create this environment that says you belong here. I know you do. I want to make sure you know. So I think we just have to be cautious around how we think about things. Now, I'm conflicted because at the same point, there is an onus upon me as well.
Absolutely.
But I just don't want us to leave this part of the conversation with somehow we having to come in and demonstrate or show that we belong. Now, about results or now about contributions, that's a whole different conversation. But I'm talking simply about I belong here. I belong in this corporation, I belong in this department, I belong on this stage or whatever. I think that is just a sense of the environment that you're in, and the owners and the leaders, the caretakers of that environment, I think is responsible for that.
Certainly, and you provide a segue to my next question, which is around the KPIs. We're a very data-driven corporate society, right? The numbers tell stories and inform and enable us to make decisions. How do you, and I'll stick with you, Cedric, how do you measure whether or not DEI is working, is successful in meeting the goals that are set for you in performance of your job?
Yeah. So what we do is we take this. Obviously, we're like everyone in here, we're a corporation, and so what matters, what you measure, it matters. You have to rely on data. I'm not simply saying that that's the only thing you have to rely on, but you certainly have to, that you start with data. So we've taken an approach that we focus on inputs to those outputs. Those outputs are aspirational. We want to have a more diverse workplace. I'll stick with representation. But we are focused on what are we doing to ensure that that has the best opportunity of happening. So we don't walk out and say, you will hire, you name the demographic. We say what we're going to do is we're going to provide you, hiring manager, with a well-qualified, diverse slate. Because we know that if there is a well-qualified, diverse slate, I'll let you make the decision who you want to hire. But what we're going to do is make sure that that slate is representative of the communities we serve and the team members. And then from that slate, you choose. And what we've discovered is that when you have these well-qualified candidates put on a slate, okay, then you will have over time a more diverse outcome. When you focus in on education, and the old folks would say, if you know better, you do better. Mm-hmm. I think people are giving a lot of folks too much credit that these people know better. They don't always know better. And I'm not giving them a pass saying they don't, but I'm saying education is important. That's why we start with education. We have a DEI training, unconscious bias, all the things you know, but we try to make it real life, real world situations. And then engagement. We require our top 2,500 leaders in the organization to engage. And what that does is engagement to me builds, if you can walk a little bit of in my shoes, if you can come here and experience what I'm experiencing with the multitude of brothers out here, if you could just see that, then that may give you a glimpse, and then that creates empathy. And then empathy to me breeds the human spirit. It's a call to action. When you empathize, you got to do something about it.
It prompts the question I want to pose to the audience very quickly. How many of you brought others of your colleagues to this conference by show of hands? So there's a opportunity, I think, to be had, right, based on what Cedric just shared, in enabling some of your colleagues to walk in our shoes. And go ahead, Sam, I want to hear from you on this.
Just to jump in on this, completely agree with Cedric where you took the conversation. There's something to the eye test, right? You walk into a room and you know within seconds if you belong or not. Same thing goes for understanding our value in the progress we're making around DEI programming and initiatives. The eye test tells you. I remember when I started my career 22 years ago on a trading floor, a prior company, I was the only black man on the entire trading floor. And we're talking, for those that are unfamiliar with trading floors, they're the size of a football field, and you're sitting 18 inches away from the next person. So there's a lot of people on this floor. I was the only one. And so I remember people would come in and they'd do tours, and I remember seeing a couple of other black men coming in at some point in time, and they looked around and you could tell this look on their face like, this is not for me. And they'd look at me and they'd look and say, give you that look, like. So the eye test is really important. When you walk into a room like this, you feel something. And so now at Morgan Stanley, I know that eye test, we're seeing progress. When people come into Morgan Stanley, they walk our trading floors or other parts of our business, they see more that look like them, and they know that things are happening. There's a difference from previous generations. So that's number one. But to the point that you mentioned, we are a data-based organization. We use data to inform decisions every single day. So we use data to think about our progress around DEI programming and initiatives. For example, we have dashboards that tell us where we are in terms of representation, but not just overall representation. We look at hiring stats, we look at promotion stats, we look at attrition stats, and we measure it against where you're located, what your level of seniority is, and other key elements. That helps us to see where the progress is, but also helps us identify where there's some gaps, where we're trending maybe in the wrong direction. But it's not just about the data, and it's not just about representation. There's other important metrics that have to be considered. For example, I mentioned before the understanding the sentiment of your population. So every other year we do an employee-wide engagement survey where we collect information from all 80,000 employees, and we're able to dimension it by their sentiment of their appreciation for working at the firm, what they like about it, the culture, they feel a sense of inclusion or not, and we can measure that by diversity demographic data. Measure that by your location, your department, who your manager is, and so many other statistics that help us to see, again, what's the sentiment of our population, and is it equal across the organization, or are there problem spots that we have to go focus in on? And then lastly, just to make this point, Kevin, I mentioned before it's important to think about external and how we engage our communities. So when you engage your communities from a DEI perspective, you have to measure what you're trying to get out of it, right? What's that measure of success? So as an example, a few years ago, we launched a HBCU Scholars Program at Morgan Stanley. 60 full academic scholarships, 15 per year at participating historically black colleges and universities. We set out with this mission of not just signing a check and sending it off and paying for the scholarship, but to have the goal of decreasing the anxiety that our students have of getting into college and how they're going to pay for it. Once they're in college, how are they going to pay for that next semester? And then leaving school debt-free. And I can tell you, in just the last 4 years, we have 60 students that are scholars now of this scholarship program. In May, we will be celebrating the first class that's graduating, which we met them after they graduated high school 4+ years ago, and now they'll be graduating college debt-free.
That's action, and I want it to be stressed, and as a takeaway for everyone here, you talked about the annual employee sentiment surveys. It's important for people to also self-identify. Collecting the data sometimes becomes one of those hindrances to creating cultures that are inclusive. And on the application, there's the prompts that are EEOC requirements about, or not requirements, let me correct myself, but you're prompted when you apply for a job to disclose optionally your gender, your sexuality, your military service. Talk about the importance of that to help you be able to formulate programs like that, as well as to take that data and make it actionable towards the culture, improving the culture of your organization. Yeah.
So I think first and foremost, these are optional categories. And so there are some that participate and then some that do not. And I understand those that do not. It's a trust thing, right?
Yeah.
Why should I trust this company, this organization that I've never been a part of, to do right by me if I share this data? History has told us from systematic discrimination that it could be held against you. So it behooves you, and what I would encourage anyone that is troubled by that possibility of participating or not, is to do your due diligence, do your research on these companies, talk to other people that are there, and see if they're genuine about their efforts. What other programs, how do they support their diverse communities? Are they really about it, or do they just talk about it? And if you do your due diligence and you feel like they're real, then you can be encouraged to feel like you can share your information because it will be used in a positive way. But I completely understand those that question that. I know at Morgan Stanley we leverage that process that you're referring to, but we also have, for all 80,000 employees, an opportunity to go in on any given day using proprietary technology to self-identify if you so want. So you might choose one day, I don't want to share, but then tomorrow you can go back in and share. Right. And so that is another way of developing trust in the system. You might not have that trust that first day, but that can evolve over time. And that's one way that we've been able to increase the participation of self-ID at the organization up to 96% now.
Cedric, I want to twist that question a little bit and bring it back inside the organization as well. The opportunity for people to not necessarily self-identify through those kinds of processes, but to self-select in participation within employee resource groups. Talk about how American has leveraged ERGs.
Yeah, so first I'll tell you, I think it's important to sometimes we have to just step back and think about these things in a practical matter. If a company is saying, which American Airlines, we are saying, that we make data-based decisions, okay? That's data-based decisions. So our decisions are based upon the data that we have and how we understand that data at the time we're reviewing it. If we do not have sufficient data, then we can't make sufficient decisions. So I think it's important for people, given, I clearly understand how people can be reluctant to do that. I use this data because I do want to know, more so for parity than anything, I do want to know where are we within various communities and demographics. And so we need that data. And then second part of your question
about how you leverage ERGs.
So we have over 20, we call them EBRGs, employee business purposely. We use that, resource groups. And any demographic you can think about, we have a 40 plus EBRG. There are those who are over 40. And they have a EBRG. We have the Jewish, as you can imagine. We have Black Professional Network. We have the Hispanic. We have over 20. It's roughly about 18,000 team members. We have 100,000 plus team members. 18,000 unique team members who've decided to give of their own time. We have faith-based EBRGs. We have it all. And we leverage these groups to make sure. Brandon Duggins, one of our leaders, are here. He's an executive, managing sponsor of our Black Professional Network. So we use these. I have Lakshman, one of our VPs here. He's the executive sponsor. I'm getting all these things mixed up. He's the executive sponsor. So it's not only just having these EBRGs, but our EBRGs have influence. They have influence. When we decide to take a new route, let's say we're going to go into a Muslim country or a country that practices a different faith. We use those faith-based EBRGs to give us cultural awareness because we want to have cultural competencies. So it is a very, very powerful, very, very influential group. Our largest EBRGs can have upward of 4,000 or 5,000 team members. And they're very active in the work that they do. They did over 600 events up to the last I looked at this was about a month ago. 600 events between those groups. And so they are very active, we're connected, and they're giving us the sentiment. Because sometimes, these surveys, y'all know how it goes, you gotta ask the question the right way. But when I get into a room with that particular affinity group, you're gonna hear it raw.
I wanna stay on this for just another minute or so to talk about the benefit of participating to the employee, to the individual. Either of you.
I'll start on that one. So employee networks, similar to your structure, we have 17 plus employee networks globally across the organization, across a number of different types of networks, many of the same that Cedric just mentioned. When you ask people, how do they sense that the company understands them, that the work is authentic, that they feel, again, like they belong, the comment that you always get back is, I don't think they see me. I don't think they hear me. The beauty of our employee networks, and really across all of our employee networks for those that are companies that are represented here today, is that it empowers our individuals, our employees, to be empowered to share who they are and what matters to them. 5+ years ago, we created a junior Black employee network. So these are Black talent that's starting their career out on Wall Street, and they call themselves Living in Color. And I was having a conversation with some of the founding members, and we're talking about the work and what they liked about their job and where their stresses or the challenges were. And one of them said, sometimes I just want to sit back and just, get together with my colleagues and just play spades, right? Just chop it up. Well, we created a spades tournament. In fact, the next one is next week. If anyone's going to be in New York, let me know. But we created a spades tournament 5+ years ago, and it catches on every year, brings people together, right? And it's real and it's authentic, and that came out of an employee network. We also use our employee networks to think about real societal events and impact to make sure that we are caring for their needs of them and their families and their communities every single day. So on Monday this week and Friday last week, we met with the leadership across all of our employee networks, and we asked them ahead of the US elections, how are you feeling? What's the sentiment of your community? What do you want from the firm? What's top of mind for you? And over those 2 sessions, we collected so much information, key themes were understood and developed, and we were able to take that package of themes and share that with our senior leadership of the firm. So they knew going into the week what the sentiment was or is of this diverse community across the organization. So our employee networks are powerful, and we can continue to use them for good in bringing more culture and awareness to the needs of our employees, broadly speaking, across the organization.
Thank you for that. Cedric, you talked about the practice of DEI as a business imperative. We just talked about ERGs. There's a two-way give and get there. Employees have an opportunity to be vocal and be visible. Companies have an opportunity to unlock some insights into the respective culture or ethnicities of those individuals and their consumer and community connections. Can you talk a little bit about what DEI from an external perspective really means? And you gave an example earlier about first class as a customer and someone else sitting in business or economy class. Talk about why it's important to also have that external facing concern and consideration.
Yeah, so we kind of think of it in 3 pillars. One is team member experience. We just talked a little bit about that. That's what goes on with our team members. Then we have a customer experience, and that is our customers. What are they experiencing? And then we have a community engagement. How are we engaged within the communities that we serve? From a customer experience piece, we are in a business that we have over 600, during our peak, over 600,000 customers a day travel on us. 600,000 people we are serving each day on 6,000 flights with roughly about 55,000 customer-facing team members that are doing that. I don't care who you are and what you do, that is ripe for some issues to go south on us, right? And when they do, when things go bad, we want to be able to make sure that we recover. So we're spending time. We also know that we've had, we want to focus in on the travel experience, particularly of our Black customers. So I'm the Chief Diversity Officer, but I spent the bulk of my career in the airports. And so I understand that experience. And so how do we create this experience when you are traveling, and you talked about the first class experience or whatever these other experiences through our lounges, even when you call and book or you go online, how do you create an experience, back to this thing we talked about on the onset, where you feel like, yep, this is my airline, I belong on this airline. Not only do they fly in the network and fly to the destinations and places that I want to go and it's the right price, but I actually choose this airline. And so there has to be work and focus on that. We have to be, again, data. If we look at our complaint ratios, or we look at the issues that are surfacing via the high profile issues with celebrities or everyday customers that come in and fly on us, how are our policies and our procedures and our protocols? Are they set in place? I give a very simple example of, we want to get our team members away from asking people about their status. Excuse me, are you first class? Why are you asking me that?
So
right?
As we wrap up, I want to ensure that there's a takeaway. How do we, the audience, arm ourselves when we continue to be barraged with this notion that anti-woke leaders are suggesting DEI doesn't have a place in our world or society? Each of you, 20 seconds.
I would start and say, lean on what has gotten you this far in your career. I think Mr. Fraser said earlier this morning that we're all resilient people. Your resilience is what has gotten you here. Your resilience is what's going to get you to the next level of your career, and it's going to get you through the ups and downs. Power through with that resiliency, and know that what you do impacts those that are coming behind you, and you can be a model for others to follow.
Cedric.
Stay the course. You know what, most of us, if you're in this room, you already have a plan. You may not even have a plan. You have a vision. You know where you want to go. You know what you want to do. You know what you're capable of doing. Put that vision to paper, have a strategy. Plan is nothing but a vision, strategy, plan, and stay the course. Don't let anything derail you. This is just a season. You said it, we've been here before. Stay the course.
I love that. And with that, we would like to invite the audience to pose any questions that you may have. There's a microphone to my left. We emphasize, of course, that it is a Q&A and not a literary opportunity to outline your manuscript. So please keep it concise. Share your name and, if you're comfortable, your organization. Roll.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joshua Gandy. I'm with Salesforce. I appreciate the time this afternoon. Cedric, my question is for you. Well, I'll be direct. My question is around your EBRGs, right? How do you continue to empower them to have influence in the business, especially during this time when we see a lot of BRGs and ERGs get removed or shrunk down and not be as influential in the business as a whole?
Yeah. So I think it again, I keep going back to this. These employee business resource groups, they're not there to be civil rights organizations, for lack of a better term. They're there to help the business, and they are there. So the things that they're doing, whether they're advocating on the business's behalf in the communities, whether they're doing work on behalf of the business. I'll give you an example, and because we're at Black Men XCEL, I'll say our Black Professional Network group. They go out, and when they're in stakeholder conferences, they also have a table set up, and they're getting people to sign up for our Advantage program. When we have job openings, they're sharing those job openings. You want a diverse group, you want to hire more black people, who better than the Black Professional Network to bring those well-qualified candidates that I talked about. So they are invaluable, and they show their value every day because they're here to do things that the company directly benefits from. So I say that the company recognizes the value of these EBRGs, and the EBRGs are giving value.
I have a question that I would ask, and again, our podium is open to the left of me, but how do you, for those employees that have challenges with reporting issues that may be of a discriminatory or lack of inclusion nature, how do you support those kinds of inquiries?
Yeah, I mean, the work that, and I'm taking liberty here, Sam is here, but the work that Sam does and the work that I do, both of us, that's part of what we are. We are the accountability arm, the conscience of the organization. If people are feeling that they can't come and report something that is of concern around them, that's a huge problem. Our why, if you will, our purpose, we say we want to care for people on life's journey. You have to create, we are the owners of that space. So what is inhibiting people from being able to share their concerns? We should welcome that. Who wants to have an organization where you have folks that don't even feel like they can trust you enough to say there is something that is happening that is not right, and I haven't even gotten to the part about do something about it. I just want to tell you about it first.
They need a safe space.
I need a safe space to do it. Yeah.
I could just jump in on that one. You know, it's important to create that safe space. It's not always there. It's not always immediately visual to those that might have a concern they want to take up. Identifying who you can go to when you're struggling or when you have an issue that you want to raise, but you're not quite sure how to raise it. What's the word choice? When's the right time? Who do you go to first? The chief diversity officer, the teams within that office are at your disposal. You know, you can go to them, you can engage them. When I get inbounds from employees that want to talk about something, and I can tell there's something that's on their mind, that they're a little bit worried about what they're gonna say and how they're gonna say it, I share a little disclaimer. I say, whatever you share with me right now, it's best between us until you tell me otherwise. And that usually levels the playing field, it usually decelerates things a little bit, and it builds a little bit of trust in the system so that they can openly share, and then we work together to figure out the rest.
Thanks for that. Question at the mic.
Hi, Dwight Williams from Morgan Stanley. As we look towards 2025 and, just to be honest with ourselves, the possibility of a ban or push from government policies to just outright ban D&I initiatives, what are our companies doing or your thoughts on how we can combat that from a senior level?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say again and reiterate, we've been here before, and the opportunities will certainly through innovation and creativity enable us to continue initiatives, maybe under different names, but I'll defer to our panel.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I just go back to and I'm always cautious how I say this, so y'all bear with me. I'm with family. Y'all got to give me some grace. But companies who retreat, companies who hide behind, we've decided not to, you wasn't about it in the first place. Let's just start there. You were not, that wasn't what you were doing, right? So we at American Airlines, again, we know what we've set out to do because I don't know why I got to keep coming back to this, but I'm in my own head now. We are clear how this is a business imperative, how it will help us, how it is a competitive advantage. If you are a company and there is something that you have that's a competitive advantage, I don't know, maybe you have some type of technology or something some patent, or you have something that you know is a competitive advantage. Now, who's gonna talk you out of turning around from that? Nobody. So nobody can talk us out of our journey around ensuring that all of us, all 100,000+ of us, feel that we belong and feel that we can show up as our authentic selves and contribute in a meaningful way. So I think for us, we don't even, I get it, I recognize I'm not oblivious and thinking that nothing is going on around me, but at the same time, it's not gonna distract us, it's not gonna change anything. We're gonna continue down the path we're gonna continue down it, and we're gonna get better. And we're gonna ensure that we have representation, that people are treated fairly, that people have opportunity to compete. We're gonna do that. We don't care who, if it's Trump, if it's Harris, if it's you name it, we don't care. We're gonna continue down this path.
I would add on, and thanks for that question, Dwight. If you think about what lays ahead in our future for 2025 and beyond, we have to follow the same type of business strategy that has always existed. You plan ahead, right? What do good businesses do? They scenario plan, right? They don't wait till the thing happens. Before it happens, they're thinking about different scenarios, and that's true in the case of, I mentioned before, affirmative action back in June of 2023. November of 2022, so 8 months before, I remember sitting in a room with senior leaders across the organization, and we talked about, with the help of a constitutional law expert, if the Supreme Court makes this decision, which we expect that they might, it would probably happen at the end of the term, or the end of the season, in June of that next year. If they do this, what are we going to do, right? So that proactive planning is definitely something that all our companies can do, and we should be doing that. Number two is thinking about different ways to engage with the work that you're already doing, staying true to the core values. One of our core values at Morgan Stanley is committing to diversity and inclusion. So we're not gonna stop just because this environment feels a little bit tougher. Because the point that we've been making this whole session is it always has been tough, and we've met it head on in the past. We're gonna continue to meet it head on. Another practical, and this is where I'll wrap up, another practical suggestion for companies is to ensure that they understand where leadership feels about the matter, right? What's the tone from the top? Not just the CEO, but what's the board's point of view? As an example, just a couple of weeks ago, I met with our board. I shared this with some of my colleagues here yesterday. And the conversation on this topic wasn't about how do we mitigate risk? How do we do what we're doing but not make a big deal about it? Or how do we, divest from some of the things that might be problematic? That wasn't the goal of the meeting. The actual title of that agenda topic with the board was how to reaffirm our commitment to this work. So that tells me going in already that I already know how they feel. I already know the sentiment. So now it's not just about figuring out what do they want to do and what challenges I might face with leadership. I already have that point of view. Now it's about how do we work together to move forward the right way.
We have time for your last question, sir.
Thank you so much. My name is Jerome Joseph. Good afternoon. Appreciate your points of view, gentlemen. We are in a new technological wave of artificial intelligence, and typically whenever there is a technological revolution that happens, marginalized communities, especially black folks, are left behind. From your perspective in your industries, aviation, travel, and banking, how are you looking at ensuring that from your respective seats that our communities are not left behind? And that as that technology is infused into the companies, that it's an equitable transition?
I think this is a proof point for why diversity matters, right? When you're introducing new technology like AI, and every one of our companies are doing that, you have to have representation that is involved in how that technology will be used. If you don't have a diverse representation, that group that's not represented will be the ones most negatively impacted by that technology. So at Morgan Stanley, as an example, we have a new head of firm-wide artificial intelligence. He has probably one of the most diverse teams at Morgan Stanley, which I'm really happy about. But also, he's brought together different council members, and they formed an AI council. And they meet on a regular basis, and they talk about the introduction of new technologies, the different communities that it's going to impact, the different opportunities that it will present, but also the risks that we potentially are taking on. So identifying the risks so you know how to meet it head on is really, really important. The second thing about AI is there's a fear that it's gonna take jobs away. I think that's a little bit not the full story. It might in some cases, but we actually view it as an opportunity to bring more diversity into our workforce by use of AI technology that's gonna help us to better understand the transferable skill sets that talent in general, but diverse talent specifically have for roles that are going to open up and ensure that we're connecting those two dots. That's one way that we plan on using artificial intelligence to create a better ecosystem and a better community, better culture, and better distributed workforce.
With that, I'd like to thank our panelists, Cedric Rockamore and Sam Lalanne, for sharing their insights and retrospectives, and for you, our audience, for engaging with us in this conversation, and hopefully you're taking away being armed in defense of DEI. Thank you.